Hi, I'm Haley Stozel, Resilience Program Director for Turning Point. We're going to continue the Resilience Practice series with a discussion on how to be more self-supportive, especially through the use of self-compassion. What self-compassion does is it creates more space for us to acknowledge some of those heavier emotions that we might be carrying. And it also helps us relate better to our inner critics, which is that little voice in your head that is constantly tearing you down or making you feel less than. Being more self-supportive through self-compassion is another skill set from Turning Point's 10 Facets of Resilience model. We'll be using different content from this training throughout the video series. But let's first start with a definition of this particular facet of resiliency. Being non-judgmental and self-supportive means recognizing when you're being overly harsh or critical with yourself, and then shifting your thought patterns and your self-talk to be more positive, supportive, and growth-focused. Thanks to the research and work of Dr. Kristen Neff, we know that there are 3 key parts to practicing self-compassion. The first is mindfulness, or that basic awareness to know that you're even stressed in the first place, or you're even struggling with some difficult or heavy emotions. And the mindfulness part is the letting go of judgment. So you're just becoming aware of what you're feeling without judgment or without overreacting to those thoughts or feelings. The second part is our connectedness and just recognizing that we're human. Everyone is human, and we even make mistakes and kind of bump up against our limitations all of the time, even when we're doing our best. So keeping in mind that we're not the only ones struggling, and probably not the only ones struggling with that particular thing in any given moment. Then there's this third component, which is self-kindness. And we've already talked a little bit about this when we were defining the facet, but it's about really showing up for ourselves and being kind and caring, looking at those self-talk patterns and changing those to reflect something that's more supportive versus being overly harsh or self-critical. So I want to give you some practice examples of how a self-compassion practice looks, and you'll see that it doesn't take a lot of extra time or energy. It's about finding ways to put these into your day-to-day situations that you normally find stressful. So the first thing I want to talk about is a compassionate breathing practice. And it's really simple to remember if you just remember it as in for me, out for you. And it's holding ourselves in the same space as others that we might be talking to or assisting. You are giving yourself compassion in that same moment that you're looking out for others. Remember, breathe in for you and out for the other person, or in for me, out for you. Another evidence-based strategy for practicing self-compassion is supportive self-talk. I put some examples here on the slide, but it's about finding a phrase that works for you. For me personally, I constantly find myself having to say, I'm doing the best I can, and that's enough. Or I might tell myself, I'm doing the best I can with the time and the resources I have right now. Something that you can pair with that supportive self-talk is some supportive touch. So researchers Germer and Neff have found that something as simple as putting your hand on your heart and telling yourself something kind is just as impactful as a formal self-compassion meditation. It's about finding a spot on the body like the shoulder or the heart or your opposite hand where you can give yourself some supportive touch and then use one of those phrases that we just covered and really give yourself a moment of kindness. So let's put it all together in what is called the 3-part self-compassion break. This is integrating those 3 key parts of self-compassion that we already talked about into a self-talk practice. Remember, the first step is just that mindful awareness, acknowledging that we're even having an emotion or that we're feeling stressed. You simply notice how you're feeling without judgment or without getting super attached to the thought. You're simply noticing it with some curious awareness. So you might tell yourself, wow, this is difficult. Or I notice that that person made me feel really angry. Or if it's stress or anxiety, you might say, I notice I'm feeling stuck or that I'm really struggling with this. The second part of this self-talk process corresponds to that second part of self-compassion, which is reminding yourself that you're connected to the shared human experience. And it's completely normal. It's natural to have emotions, and it's very normal to struggle, even when we do our best. So you might tell yourself, it's normal, it's natural to have emotions. It does not make me a bad person or mean I'm bad at my job. Or you might tell yourself, I'm not alone in this. We're all doing our best to adapt and cope. And then finally, you might say, we all run into our limitations, even when we try our best. Then the last part of this 3-part self-compassion break is to give yourself some kindness, some compassion. Tell yourself something kind, like, may be patient with myself and this other person, or my stress and feelings are valid, but I don't have to live in them forever, or they don't have to determine how I treat myself or other people. Or you might just need to, tell yourself, I'm doing the best I can in this moment, and that's enough. I think we all struggle with judging ourselves harshly and kind of basing our self-worth on how much we do for others. And so I want to walk us through these 3 steps again, but with that situation of feeling like what we do is never enough for someone. So whether it's a client that you're trying to support, or a coworker, or a family member, we struggle with that idea that we're never enough, we didn't do enough. And let's see how self-compassion and the self-compassion break can work in that situation. So the first thing is that we just name and notice the thought, right? That mindful awareness. So you might tell yourself, I notice I'm having the thought that I didn't do enough to help this person. All right, so no judgment. You're simply noticing and naming, acknowledging that thought that you had that you're not enough. The second part, if you remember, is that shared human connection, or normalizing the emotion, normalizing the struggle, and knowing that we all run into limitations, even when we're doing our best. So in this situation of feeling like we're not doing enough to help someone, we might say, everybody's on their own journey in life. Everybody has their own challenges. And I know that I alone am not the cause of this person's struggle or this person's suffering, nor is it within my power alone to make it go away or to fix it. And I wish I could, but I'm being realistic that it's not within my power to do that. All right, so that's that second step. And then finally, what is it that we need to tell ourselves to be more self-supportive in this situation? And I really like the phrase, I'm doing the best I can with the time, knowledge, and resources available to me. And we might add to that, caring for others is hard, or helping others is hard, and I'll do the best I can when I can, knowing that there's always going to be limitations that I run into. And that doesn't mean that I didn't still help that person as best as possible. Whether it's the 3-part self-compassion break that we just walked through, or another one of the self-compassion practices we covered earlier, if you go to integrate those into your day, just remember, this is hard. And it might take some time to kind of unlearn some of those hypercritical thoughts that we default to. We tend to be harsh and judgmental with ourselves. And let's be honest, being more self-compassionate is not something that is typically taught to us in our, upbringing or our school settings, and maybe training on the job. It's just not a common thing to come in contact with. So especially if you're learning self-compassion for the first time, know that even those of us who have been trying to practice it for several years, we still struggle with it. And it is a practice. It's not something we ever say, wow, I can tick the box, never have to worry about this again. Self-compassion is something we need in every interaction and every situation that we go about. If you're feeling like you need some extra support in this area, then I encourage you to check out Dr. Kristen Neff's website, selfcompassion.org. These videos were made possible by the partnership between Turning Point, the Masonic Cancer Alliance, and WorkWell Kansas. Please see the following slides for more information about these organizations.